So hello and welcome to the Institute of Refrigeration's first podcast of our series. So I'm really pleased to be joined by Professor Graham Maidment and Katerina Marquez of London South Bank University. We are live in Las Vegas. How are you guys doing?
Morning, Miriam. Yeah, fantastic. It's a beautiful place to be. The sun's shining and it's a fantastic conference. Brilliant.
No, it's brilliant to be at ASHRAE. It's my first conference in the States, so I'm enjoying it for sure.
So what's it like being back in a group of 100 or thousands and thousands of people? I mean, we've had a couple of years where we're just on computer screens. So what does it feel like now to be actually able to talk to people face to face?
I don't think you really remember what it was like until you're back into it. But it is such a brilliant environment to work in. You know, just the sort of the connections that you make, the discussions that you have in the coffee lounge over a beer at night, and you know, and you solve stuff really, really quickly. It's just absolutely fantastic, and yeah, I want to do another one.
Well, I've heard they have them every 6 months, Graham. So you might. And what about for you, Kat? Then it's the first ASHRAE. And I mean, an ASHRAE is the biggest global gathering of people in refrigeration, air conditioning, and ventilation. So is it overwhelming or exciting? I mean, what's the overall impression?
Yeah, it's super exciting. I mean, just the place where it's been held, Vegas, just the buildings, they are enormous. We couldn't find our way in the first day. And the plenary session was great. I mean, it really was. They had social distancing, but it was such a large room and it was really full. And you could see, you know, from the speeches that people were so pleased to be back in person meeting. And what we found, like at the end of, we had a really good workshop and people were asking so many questions. It was actually, we're running out of time. And after we finished, they were coming to us in the lobby to carry on the discussion. So it was really good.
So you mentioned the plenary. Who was the keynote speaker?
Yeah, so it was Anne Daniels. So she's a Brit and she's got a fantastic background. She started late in life as an explorer, and I think she was probably early 40s. She ended up competing for a place to get on an all-women's team to go to the South Pole, and she did. Out of 80 people, she got onto that team, and then it was a relay, and then so she did a proportion of it to get to the pole, and then she got the bug. The South Pole all the way through as well, and I think she did a solo expedition as well. But so it was connected in a way to cooling, not because it was in a cold place. It was
well.
Really
we've called our podcast "Tip of the Iceberg," so it kind of fits. It's frozen, right?
Yeah, it was really more emphasising the team, the values.
Right.
Yeah, it was really more emphasising the team, the values of teams, and she volunteered that actually she wasn't really an athlete. Okay, you know, she knew some stuff, but she was a really good team player, and she spoke about all of the things that needed to happen, and they divvied it up and worked together, and it worked really, really well. And I think she was the first person or the first team to do that, first women team to do that. So it's a tremendous achievement, and it was great that she was a Brit as well. So.
Well, that was going to be questions as well, is like who is leading the world in refrigeration, air conditioning developments at the moment? What, you know, you've been to, I know they have hundreds of different papers that are going on all the time. So what have you picked up in terms of which institutions or countries that are really making an impression now?
And this were the two flavors from the plenary. The two main things that they spoke about was EDI, so equality, diversity, inclusivity, and then decarbonisation of buildings. Actually, and there was a third, which was dealing with the pandemic. They had a pandemic task force, and for each of these, they had task force. And so we heard how they've been dealing with the pandemic, and they've been making some really good progress. And it would appear that the Bill Bamfleth, who was a past president of ASHRAE, he led the task force, and the stuff that's coming out of it is informing the rest of the world in terms of standards and how you operate buildings, etc., to minimise, contamination, etc. So that one, I think the US are leading. The other two, EDI and the UK are doing pretty well. We went to we've just come out of a workshop on it, and it feels a little bit like they're maybe 2 or 3 years behind. And the stuff that we're doing, the decisions that we're making as a country, narrowing on potential solutions. So there's a really good opportunity, I think, for us to work internationally, to work together, to inform each other. And I spoke to them afterwards, and they're keen. So there may be an international task force on decarbonisation. Maybe, Kat, you can say something about the EDI stuff that came out.
Great. Well, we ran a workshop on role models and how to inspire the next generation of engineers, and it was really successful. We had so many questions. Well, we had a great panel of speakers that helped as well. But just in terms of ASHRAE, I think they also have a task force on EDI, and they had posters everywhere about it, and everyone is wearing a badge about ASHRAE and EDI. So I think there's great progress being made, really. And one thing we thought was really interesting is they created this book for children about buildings that Graham is just going to show you.
Yeah.
What does it say? Lucy's Engineering Adventures. For those of you listening, it's a sort of looks like a comic book. Is that right?
Well, it's basically got poems and stories and a engineering adventure, really, and it describes it in a simple way that maybe 7-year-olds can connect to.
And we were thinking about doing something like this in the UK. I think they would work really well. You just need to work with an illustrator and someone that is experienced writing for kids. So that is a very simple message, but at the same time inspiring and interesting.
Yeah, and so maybe a book would be really good. And if we can find someone who's a volunteer perhaps that's going to have a go at this, I'm sure we can get someone to illustrate it. And the other thing that they did as well, which was really good for engagement, was they had a rap, which sounds a bit cheesy in a way, but it was a HVACR rap, and it was really.
So when you say a rap, I take it it's not a sandwich. It's like a poem thing.
Like a hip hop, really.
A hip hop group. Okay, that I wasn't expecting to hear hip hop at the ASHRAE conference.
Exactly, that was actually the opening to the ASHRAE. It was hip hop, and it was, the theme of the song was obviously about refrigeration, air conditioning, heat pumps, etc. But it was really good the way he made it. No, I think it just. Everyone was like, wow, what is this?
Interesting to hear that when you think about ASHRAE, you think it's going to be technical, the latest refrigerants, and yet what you're saying is some of those other topics are really going to have a major influence on our industry. Things like diversity inclusion, things like, looking at careers and things like that. So those are your biggest takeaways, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the three: quality, diversity, and inclusion, bringing new people into the industry, and decarbonisation of buildings. Those were the main areas that are really, really strong. That the Americans are focusing on. They see the need that they have to move quickly now in these areas, and perhaps they would say actually that they're perhaps a little bit behind. So they're going to move quickly. So I think, as we know, once America starts moving on something, it moves really quickly. So, it's an exciting time.
Because people have been saying to me that, they would love to have been able to go to ASHRAE. They wish that they could go along and find out. I mean, what would you say to people who, they've missed out on what's been going on there? What's coming out of there that they can maybe pick up some of the information?
So there is obviously the virtual. You can join virtually, and maybe this is something that we should try to do in the future. Maybe we could try for the June, the summer one, just to draw it and see if we get the same sort of benefit. And a lot of the meetings are virtual. And one we did yesterday was a hybrid. It was virtual and face. It was virtual and face to face. So there were real opportunities to engage that way. We had quite a few questions online, so people were there. And I think someone said there's something like 2,300 people here, and about 500 joined virtually. So it's
a little bit about the pandemic from the point of view of the technical approaches, but in terms of how those kind of conferences are working, how the community is working together, you see that sort of hybrid approach it looks to be the way it's going to go forward.
Yeah, I'm absolutely. It's going to be that. I think the technology that they use perhaps needs to improve slightly, because you do feel a bit sort of that some of the things are a bit, but some of the systems don't work as best as they could do. But yeah, we're starting.
Difficult to coordinate hybrid meetings. I mean, having the recording in place, the filming, but they did it really well in some of the rooms. It's just not all the rooms had the capacity to do that. So part of the future, you kind of need the technology to help you. Otherwise, it is difficult to do a hybrid meeting.
It's one of those things that I think as the more they do it, the more experience people get. It's like with the dreaded Zoom that we're on at the moment, and everyone was like forgetting to unmute to start with. So as we go along, we get there and we find these things, better ways of working. I think on the hybrid thing is a very tricky model. At least it gives more opportunity for people internationally. And that may be something people have been missing. Presumably there's, every country is represented at the ASHRAE now. I mean, you must have met some really interesting people on your either in the sessions you've been doing or just generally at the dinners and the social receptions.
Yeah, absolutely. So yesterday, 10 different countries that represented. So Romania, guy from Romania telling us about all the work that they've been doing for many years. I just didn't know about it. And so sort of making those connections. They've got the same problems that we have to solve decarbonisation, maybe at different stages. So yeah, we should. It's great to be able to have this experience, and maybe going back to the hybrid thing. Maybe because it is such a big commitment to come to ASHRAE unless you know what it's like. So maybe people could go into the hybrid or go into the virtual conference and just see what it's like, and then they perhaps it's easier to justify coming to the face-to-face, because I don't think you can beat face-to-face.
So both of you have been giving technical presentations on the technical program. How did that go? What kind of feedback did you get from the rest of the world? Is there anything that you suddenly thought, oh, wow, I forgot that. I should have done that.
Yeah, I mean, so Graham was sharing the workshop on integrated smart heating and cooling, and we had Joel Hamilton from the UK government. So he gave a really good talk, and at the end he had the typical question that someone asks. So how are you funding decarbonization? How does it work? How does it work? And it did respond really well, as it is a mix of incentives and levies, and working with industry and with academia. So it gave a really good answer, but it was interesting because it seemed like the US was really interested in what the UK is doing, as following in our footsteps in a way, because we are in a way ahead, I think, in terms of decarbonization and having a strategy in place, really.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic workshop, and yeah, we had about, I would say there was about 150, 200 there, and they stayed for an hour, and they enjoyed my jokes, okay, tremendously.
Well, that's got to be a first at least.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, no, it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And the equality and diversity one, we did well, it was not a quality and diversity workshop. Kat organised it.
Yeah, it was about role models and how to inspire the next generation of engineers. And we had talks about equality, diversity, and inclusion. We talked about worldwide survey of which, so we were to talk about that because we had Ayman El-Taloni from the United Nations. So it was such a great bunch of speakers, really. And to close it off, we had Lucy Sherburn from Fairheat, and she's a young engineer, and she just wrapped the session so nicely, just giving her own experience. So it's great, really. It's just, it was quite inspiring, and we had so many questions from the audience, people from all over the world as well, just giving their perspective, their suggestions. There was someone from ASHRAE there that also engaged. So it was quite positive.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of tools that the person from ASHRAE actually said there's quite a lot of tools there already for engaging different people, and maybe that's something that as an organisation we could perhaps think about at some point, because we've got some ideas. As how what we do to engage with people from outside, and they've got as well. So, it'd be really good to try to pull them in the same place, because it probably doesn't really matter whether you're trying to engage someone in America or in the UK. The tool in the UK, the tools that you will use are probably quite similar, I would imagine. So
yeah, I mean, that sounds as though that's another great takeaway from the conference, where you find other people are working in the same areas as you, and then you can start pooling those resources and bouncing ideas and find out what worked and what didn't work. And I'm just really on technical topics, that it's actually it's a lot broader than just the latest, dare I say, widget. It's how we're working is becoming just as important as what we're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest with you, I haven't seen any real widget presentations. It's all been sort of, let's work together on stuff. So yeah, no, it's been really good for that, Miriam. Really, really good.
And what do you see the follow-ups then from your point of view as being the UK reps at this meeting? What's going to happen next? How is the world going to change as a result of this?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there always needs to be one or two things that you take away and you do. I mean, for us, from the workshop which we did was on smart energy systems. It would be great for us to be able to start, and we suggested at the meeting with internationally, because smart energy systems are different everywhere, and actually learning why someone's done this technology, applied this technology in this application will help everyone. So it will be able to increase the knowledge base, I think, in this area. And going back to the EDI one, I think there are so many resources that are available that we should start to collect together. So for me, they're probably the two takeaways that I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yes, EDI and decarbonization were definitely the hot topics. I think there was also it's going to be a lot of presentations today more related to COVID and how buildings respond to that. So that's obviously an emerging trend that is going to stay. But yes,
fantastic. Spending money in the casinos. But don't tell anyone.
You are in Vegas, and what can I say? You have to sort of you have to explore the cultural side as well as the technical side, I guess.
Yeah. What do they say? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Not on this occasion, I hope. I hope you're bringing.
Yeah. What do they say? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Not on this occasion, I hope. I hope you're bringing some of that information and technology and news and whatever back. I mean, that's the point. This is why we're doing these things as podcasts and trying to pick up sort of news and views and what else is going on in the broader context of some of these questions. So Graham and Kat are both involved in our Beyond Refrigeration environmental initiative. So it sounds as though the net zero work is going to take forward on that. It's really interesting to hear that there's going to be some good resources, it looks like, coming out on COVID and the future of healthy buildings and healthy ways of working. and also the diversity and things like that. These are all, stuff that's, or at least some of that stuff, the Institute's working on as well. So there's a lot of synergy there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, Miriam. And yeah, look, these are international problems, and yeah, we need to work together. Otherwise, rather than compete, it's not work together. So it's win-win. Everybody wins.
And everyone brings a different perspective, because there is, I don't know, cultural differences. There is climate conditions that are very different. So you need to adapt. Yeah, and collaborate. That's how we all gain the most, really.
Definitely. A big international conference, presumably. New collaborations, new ideas. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Brilliant. So any final comments then, just before we close off, because we're about there, I think, on our timings on this. Any other things you want to say, the view from ASHRAE?
No, I think we've probably covered everything. If anyone's interested in finding out more what it's like to go to ASHRAE, feel free to contact me or Kat, I guess. And if you're interested, we can, and if you do come, okay, we probably will continue to come every winter.